Hello everyone. This is the 20th part of the story, Avatar in DC Universe. Chapter 60, Aftermath. General Point of View. There you have it again, folks. A display of the ineptitude that is a stark reminder of why we don't need these so-called heroes to save us. If they can't protect a simple town from losing a treasured landmark and a frankly beautiful beach, what hope does the Earth as a whole have? G. Gordon Godfrey took a sip of water from his glass and stared intently at the screen. His face was stretched out into an expression of mockery. A scene of the destroyed Mount Justice base appeared on a TV screen behind him. The camera panned over the whole area, showing the devastation implicated on the banks of the Happy Harbor shoreline. But G. Gordon, the Justice League, tried their best. No lives were lost, thankfully, but that does not excuse the fact that the Justice League failed in safeguarding their old base. Gasp. His mocking expression turned into a forced, surprised one. He held it for a few seconds before his face settled into the smug grin from before. Surprised to hear that? Shocked? Exasperated? That's right, folks, my earlier point stands, poor showing on the League's part, exposing what they're actually good for, standing around and watching as another freak wreaks havoc on our proud nation's land. Ask yourself what they've actually. The screen shut off with a click from the remote in Calder's hands. Hey, I was watching that. Connor complained. Calder sighed and threw the remote at Superboy's direction. The clone caught it out of the air and turned the screen on, muting the sound in the process. Ugh, thanks for the silence. I couldn't handle more of his trash talk. He's making the Flash and the others look bad. Wally said in anger. Robin threw a concerned gaze at his teammate and sighed. I agree. Dude needs to stay whelmed. Boy Wonder offered. Calder got up from his seat and started walking towards the door. Where are you going, Calder? Mgen asked. The five of them were in the Star Labs facility at Taos, which was coincidentally the site of the Erdl initiative into Zeta Beam Technology Research and the future Metahuman Youth Center. They were resting in a private waiting room while Artemis completed getting a checkup, just like the rest of them. Out. I need to think. Calder answered Mgan and proceeded to leave. The door opened before he could push it and in walked Artemis. She looked at Calder and sighed. So the mood is no less depressing inside this room as it was outside, huh? She commented. Some might even say it's worse. Calder replied before looking at Wally's direction. Calder means kid hasn't touched any of the nachos they brought us. Shocking, right? Robin added. Artemis and the others chuckled slightly amidst Wally's outcries of, dude. The loud crack of a remote getting crushed in Connor's hand drove everyone to silence. Connor rounded up on them. How can you laugh at a time like this? Have you already forgotten what happened 2 hours ago? You know, the fight with Maelstrom, our teammate who we found out has been hiding a lot of things from us? Or did we move past that between the time we were all passed out from the ass-kicking we got? Connor finished with a shout. Hey, none of us intended for things to happen the way they did. Artemis shot back while continuing to talk. The whole situation was fucked up from the moment some of us decided to break into Aiden's room. Robin flinched at the accusatory tone in Artemis' tone. He knew she was talking about him, Calder and Wally. That's so hypocritical, Artemis, you were also there, you followed us in. Wally responded, getting up from his seat. I did, but I never wanted to in the first place. And maybe if we'd approached him in a less hostile way, the fight wouldn't have happened. Artemis replied vehemently. She's right. Mgen sighed, silencing Wally's next words. Beautiful, that's not. Wally begun but trailed off upon Mgen shaking her head. No, Wally, let's face it, she studied everyone's faces, we messed up. Badly. If we'd been more understanding and patient with Aiden's situation. Connor snapped. Fuck that. This is no one's fault other than his. No one told him to do what he did. He betrayed our trust. And we betrayed his in return. Aqualad interjected, interrupting Connor's statement. Calder, you can't be serious right now, he lied to us and destroyed the mountain. Our base. How can you justify trying to let him get away with that? Wally hissed. Out of all of them, he felt the most conflicted about the whole situation. Wally disliked not seeing eye to eye with the others. It was not that he hated Aiden. Not really. He just saw him for what he was. No one is trying to justify anything. Gah. All he's saying, all I am saying is that we could have handled it better. Artemis tried to convince the stubborn speedster. I don't see what that would have accomplished. He was already off the team by then. Had we just kept quiet and watched him leave the cave, we would have lost the chance to confront him, letting him get away with the lies. Wally remained insistent. Why couldn't Artemis see his point of view? They were stressing out over someone who had not only betrayed their trust but even attacked them. Wally had woken up with his balls in pain. Aiden had hit him while he was down, showing the kind of person he actually was. The speedster and the archer gave each other ugly looks. Artemis tightened her hands into fists while contemplating if she was fast enough to land a blow on the speedster's face. That's enough. Both of you stand down. We are not enemies. Calder came in between them. Artemis, I understand where you're coming from. Truly I do. As the leader, I failed all of you by acting brashly in allowing us to invade the privacy of one of our own. That said, I am glad we did. Artemis and the others looked at him in surprise. Calder's face turned hard. Everyone has secrets. But it's not a secret anymore when it can put the rest of the team at risk. Artemis looked away after Calder's statement. His words were like a gut punch to her. Calder rounded up to Wally. And Wally, while you have a point, you're letting your dislike and suspicion get in the way of what actually matters, getting our friend back. We've fought together, laughed together and supported each other. That bond cannot be broken that easily. It's clear what we need to do. Wally shook his head. He knew Calder was right, yet he didn't want to admit that he might have let his personal feelings of envy take control, due to how everything came easily to Aiden. Aiden didn't have problems with his powers like Wally did. Gan and Artemis both liked him and the dude seemed to have an answer for everything. Wally wasn't dumb, however, he knew that he could make or break the team dynamic. It all depended on what his next words were going to be. He took in a deep breath, wincing at the slight pain in his balls, and nodded. You're not wrong, Calder. The mood eased up somewhat and everyone calmed down. Now what? Are we simply going to stay here until the League decides what to do with us? Connor grumbled in annoyance. Calder, on the other hand, turned to look at Boy Wonder, who had been suspiciously silent during the whole conversation. Robin? Boy Wonder looked up from his spare holographic wrist computer, while smirking. While you guys have been in the real-life equivalent of a sappy soap opera, I've been busy. Aiden done. The projected screen of the wrist computer changed to reveal a clear satellite feed above Happy Harbor. I hacked into the Watchtower's satellites. They are much better than the ones currently in the market. Outfitted with cloaking functions and a monitoring system that is leagues beyond anything other than the best tech companies can provide. The image showed it was Mount Justice, a few minutes before it was destroyed. With an inaudible blast, the whole mountain shook to its core and was left in shambles and pieces. The Justice League members were revealed along with Wonder Woman, who was thrown towards the rest by a punch from Aiden. Connor tightened his fists at the casual display of power. He still couldn't believe how deceptively powerful Aiden was. It was leagues above his own, to the point where Connor felt undeserving of the S on his chest. He was made from power and for power. So why did he feel so weak? Gan placed a hand on his shoulder and looked at him in understanding. Connor looked down, allowing the comfort. Thanks. He softly murmured, to which the Martian smiled slightly. By studying this, we can see which direction Maelstrom took, and then I can use the feed to track his movements by enlarging the scope of the image. Robin explained to the others. Good. Calder said in determination. Although Batman had given them express orders not to go after Aiden, that's exactly what they were gonna do. Aiden was a part of their team, not the Justice League. Hence, he was their responsibility. To get rid of the feeling of regret and guilt burning deep inside Calder, he would have to make sure Aiden came back. One way or the other, they weren't going to abandon one of their own. Everyone sucked in a breath when the screen showed the massive explosion that had happened, disintegrating the wrecked pieces of Mount Justice. Just before it could reach Superman and the others, Robin paused the clip. There. He pointed at Aiden, magnifying the video to show a clearer image of their wayward teammate. Aiden surveyed the scene of his blooming attack, and then suddenly his gaze turned to the sky. Robin's heart nearly jumped up in surprise, thinking that he was looking at them, which would have been impossible. A second later, the action was explained when Aiden was teleported out by a brief surge of light, undetectable due to the massive energy wave about to swallow the team's mentors. Whoa, you all saw that, right? You all saw Aiden get beamed up like a scene from Star Trek? Artemis asked. So, what does this mean? Was Aiden abducted by aliens or something? Wally replied, unsure. Robin ran a hand through his face. I was so sure that this would work, now all we have is a dead end. The youngest member of the team said, disheartened. Calder closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were calm. Do not worry. Just because we hit an obstacle does not mean we give up. We will find a way. A way to bring Aiden back. What Calder didn't tell the others was that he was afraid. Afraid of what would happen if the antithesis to the Justice League got their hands on someone like Aiden. Neptune saved them all if it came to that. Chapter 61, Lex Luthor's Ingenuity. General point of view. Hats off to you, old friend. Everything has gone on splendidly, just like you said. Vandal Savage inclined his head at the bald-headed man walking beside him. Luthor accepted the compliment graciously while slightly smiling. You give me too much credit, Savage. The chips were already in place, it was a simple matter of being the catalyst they needed to fall. Their feet were quiet on the floor. Both of them walking along a hallway inside the facility, headed to a sublevel that was off-limits to the regular employee. Not that there were normal employees here. The facility was one set underneath the Sahara Desert, and apart from a few important scientists, the upkeep of the place was manned by drones. The security was top-notch. The whole base was powered by alien energy reactors from their outer space connections as the main source of power, paired with LexCorp's own upgraded solar panels for minimal tasks and the maintenance of a cloak around the upper section of the base, whose sole purpose was to hide any activity from the satellites above. The only way to get in and out of the base was through a boom tube, with the scientists hired residing in the premise all year round after Luthor convinced them it was better that way. The pair came upon a huge door and stopped. A light from the security panel scanned Luthor and granted him the access. The door opened with a hiss and they stepped through, arriving inside a chamber that was housing two pods and a middle-aged man, going over some files on the computer. Dr. Hines, how are our two subjects? The scientist rounded up at Luthor nervously. Mr. Luthor, you're here. Luthor raised an eyebrow. Come now, Doctor, how many times am I going to tell you to simply call me Lex? The doctor gulped loudly and threw a glance at the man standing beside Luthor. Right, to answer your question, sir, the boy has stabilized, but the girl, despite possessing the same physical parameters as her twin, the residue energy from the father box has rejected her. We are thinking of scrapping her from the project. Savage raised an eyebrow at the doctor's explanation. If what he said was actually true, then Luthor had clearly outdone himself. Savage tightened the hand behind his palm as he thought of one thing and one thing only. A question. How? How had Luthor done it? MMH. Luthor hummed. I see. How soon can he be made field ready? The aged doctor adjusted his glasses and licked his lips in nervousness. I don't think he can. We are not dealing with the soul of Tommy Terror alone anymore, sir. Whatever this father box residue energy is, it has eternally changed him into a vegetative state. The combined trauma of their minds fusing has left him comatose with no signs of awakening. Luthor stepped up closer to the pod and placed a hand on the metal while closing his eyes. Savage observed the action, content to stay silent, curious on what Luthor's next move would be. Lex closed his eyes and a few seconds later opened them. He turned to the lead scientist, Dr. Hines, and smiled slightly. Just like Luthor thought, the doctor was wrong. "I believe that will be all, doctor. Could you excuse us for a minute?" Dr. Hines thought about refusing but ultimately chose to leave. Something told him he was expendable, no matter the cordiality Luthor treated him with. The door closed behind him, leaving Luthor and Savage alone inside the chamber. Any thoughts of eavesdropping were thrown out of the window when Dr. Hines, upon leaving the room, came upon her. Mercy Graves, Lex Luthor's personal assistant/bodyguard. He thought of telling her off. Saying all the things he couldn't say to Luthor's face. Telling her of how big a mistake Luthor had done. Hines was a scientist. That meant he navigated life through logic and reasoning. Supernatural phenomena were just instances of scientific anomalies that couldn't be explained quickly due to insufficient data. However, that thing inside Tommy Terror. He shuddered. Whatever it was nothing good. It felt inky and malicious. God help them all if Luthor wasn't stopped. Once they were alone, Luthor went towards a button and pressed it. The pod holding Tommy Terror started opening, revealing a shirtless blonde teen who had his eyes closed. Savage cleared his throat slightly. The action made Lex stop and look back at him. "How did you do it, Luthor?" Savage inquired. Luthor smiled. The action would have sent a chill through anyone's spine due to how sinister it was, but unfortunately or fortunately, he was dealing with Vandal Savage. Savage had simply seen more terrifying things. But he was wary because Luthor's smile seemed off-putting and out of character for him. As if he'd already won. The Father Box and I possess a mutual pact of understanding. So when the Maelstrom boy cleansed it, he was merely separating its core, the soul if you will, from its inner components. Luthor turned to Tommy and motioned at him. He was a failsafe in case the heroes in their infinite wisdom decided to try and destroy the Father Box, at which point, I could direct it here by using the limited control it granted me over it. Luthor explained, adjusting his tie. That explains why you were not at all worried about losing the Father Box. You already had a backup plan just in case. Savage hummed. What would have happened had they decided to secure the Father Box in the watchtower instead of destroying it? Luthor chuckled. Nothing. That was the original plan at first. You see, from inside, we could have remotely used it to access the Justice League's database for information and security measures. Phase 1 would have been a breeze during that time. It would effectively be our very own Trojan horse. Savage smiled slightly. I see you had accounted for almost everything. The older man said. Luthor leaned on the table while keeping an eye on Tommy's condition. You are wondering what would have happened if the Justice League would have tasked someone else to study the Father Box. Logic and past actions dictates that they would have gone for Star Labs. The former due to the high level of scientific research and funding it gets, and the latter due to the trust the League puts on them. Being a shareholder, I could extract the Father Box any time I wanted. Vandal Savage was minutely impressed. Then again, Luthor was the most dangerous member of the Light after him. There was a reason he had prevailed in a city with a being possessing the powers of a god. Prevailed and thrived even. Vandal knew that many of the plans they were going to carry out had been streamlined and made more efficient due to Luthor's efforts. Savage was eager to see what would next come out of Lex's ingenious mind. With this, I believe we are ready to plead your case to the rest. Savage stated, making Lex frown a little. Oh please, we both know the only problem is going to be Clarion. I am doubtful he can keep his hatred and resentment for the boy in check, enough to bring him into my fold. The others will see the opportunity presented, I am sure. In any case, let's go and get this over with. Savage turned to the side without commenting and inserted his hand in the pocket of his jacket. Withdrawing it, a father box was revealed. Instantly the living computer started going haywire. Savage looked at it curiously, then turned his attention to Tommy Terror. "It says he's an abomination." Luthor smiled and snapped his fingers. A purple aura covered Tommy's body and he snapped his eyes open. The previous blue eyes were now a shade of menacing purple. "Well then, he'll fit right in with us," the bald-headed genius replied. A boom tube opened at Savage's behest and they all walked in. The surroundings changed from the drab hallway of the Sahara Cadmus facility into an Asian-themed, classic environment. The buildings had an ancient feel to them, with statues that depicted mythical creatures like dragons and phoenixes dotting the area. A man was seated on a platform constructed to overlook the courtyard. A courtyard that ended on a row of stairs and a bridge that connected the main buildings of the island and the route towards the beach. The man was light-skinned with white hair and dark brown eyes. He was completely bald on the top of his head, and the rest of his hair extended near his shoulders. His white mustache went to his cheeks and under his chin. He rose upon their arrival, cutting his meditation short and bowed slightly. "Welcome to Infinity Island, the den of the demon's head and sanctuary of those who have pledged their lives to his cause. Follow me, if you please." With that he turned around and started walking inside the establishment. "Time has not been kind to you, Sensei," Savage observed as a way of greeting. "Alas, such is the way of the world, immortal. I have no regrets and have accepted my fate," Sensei replied calmly. Luthor chose to ignore the conversation as he was focused on another matter. The boy behind him, Tommy Terror, was an opportunity. A chance. Already an idea was blooming inside his mind. The junior team had more times than not been a thorn on their side. Due to their young age and inexperience when compared to their mentors, some of the light underestimated them. They needed to even out the playing field. Luthor knew of how to do it. It was simply a matter of convincing the rest of the light to see things his way, and when had he ever failed at that? Chapter 62, New Horizons. General Point of View. I've called this meeting to order for one sole purpose. Ra's al Ghul, begun. All the members of the Light were in attendance. The Light emphasized an equal partnership steeped in mutual cooperation towards a certain goal. The truth, however, was that there was a clear leader. The round table and unbiased layout of the arrangements was more to spare the self-importance of some of the members, as the group was certainly not lacking in overinflated egos and pride. Despite the neutrality of the seating arrangement, the obvious unofficial leader was Vandal Savage. A perk that came with being the oldest original member. To his right was Lex Luthor, Queen Bee, the Brain, Ra's al Ghul, Ocean Master, and lastly Clarion. Ra's al Ghul swept his gaze over the others and cleared his throat, a grim look on his face. He finally settled on Savage. A complication has risen concerning a deal with a new associate of ours. Galil has disappeared into thin air and another party has taken over his base. The demon's head informed. Savage suddenly looked serious upon the drop of Galil's name. "While I admit that that's troubling news and a great blow to our interests, I'm more concerned about this new party." Luthor spoke up. "We currently don't have any detailed information about them. I have instructed my shadows to maintain a distance. Caution is highly recommended in this situation." "Why?" "With our capabilities and resources, I see no point in pussyfooting around those who stand before the light and our interests." "Surely you're not afraid, Roz?" Ocean Master spoke up, a condescending look on his face. "Fool! You know nothing of what you speak of." Queen Bee was quick to interject, mocking the Atlantean for his impatience. Ocean Master gritted his teeth and wisely settled down in his seat. Blowing up to the Queen of Byalia was an ill-advised action, not just because he would suffer reprimand from the others for disrupting the meeting but from Queen Bee herself. The woman was ruthless. "Well, out with it then. There must be a reason why you exercise such caution, Ra's al Ghul." The brain spoke, trying to keep the whole thing moving. He had other matters to attend to. All of you with the exception of Vandal Savage and I are not aware of who or rather what Galeal is. Allow me to explain. Galeal is a hell spawn. A true demon from the very pits of hell itself. He has been a central figure in most of humanity's prolific tragedies and wars. In other words, a dangerous figure. Ras Al Ghul left the room shocked with a few exceptions. Savage stapled his fingers together and hummed. Whoever has the capability to take out Galeal is someone we should take seriously. Ras Al Ghul concluded, making Clarion chuckle while petting his familiar. A glint of curiosity appeared in his eyes. Interesting. Clarion murmured. Luthor smiled conspiratorially and proceeded to say. This presents a chance for us to expand into new ventures and make new allies. When the time is right, we should make contact. Peacefully, of course. You confuse this for your many business deals, Luthor. I doubt your honey-flavored words can convince whoever this new party is. What we need is a show of force. The light is powerful. Let us indicate that. It will send a message not to take us lightly while giving us a strong position of bargaining if it comes to that. Queen Bee countered. Spoken like a true dictator, Luthor thought to himself. Queen Bee is right. Let me bring down the tempest on their heads. If they still remain standing or make it out alive, then we can treat them equally. Ocean Master agreed, a manic thirst to prove himself shining in his eyes. Not that anyone could see it due to the mask he had on. I love it. It would create so much chaos, right, Tikal? Clarion seemed the most excited out of anyone present. Luthor sighed loudly. For starters, Ocean Master, we have the Light's Enforcer for such matters as bringing down the tempest on their heads, and secondly, you're missing the point. We have an opportunity to form a good relationship with someone powerful enough to take out a millennia-old demon. From there we can work to bring them under the Light's influence. The bald-headed man explained the advantage in his proposition. Ocean Master crossed his hands together. It didn't take a genius to know that he wasn't convinced. While the table is divided in two, I am more worried about something else. What does this mean for the meta-creation research? The brain inquired. To him, it didn't matter if they formed an alliance with whoever this new player was or destroyed them, advancement was his main goal. The members around the table all looked towards Ras Al Ghul for answers. He was the one who had finalized the deal with Galeal, hence the matter was under his purview. If we can acquire the research data from Galeal's office, depending on whether it's still there or not, it will help immensely into either perfecting Cobra Venom or creating a new, unique and stable serum for our forces to use against the fight with the heroes and those who might stand in our way. The demon's head explained softly. His tone was one that brokered no argument. Then it's decided. We wait and observe. Learn this new party's pattern and behavior, and when the time is right, we shall decide if they are worthy to meet us or the blade of the Light's Enforcer. This matter is closed. Savage finally spoke up after much contemplation. Spoilsport. Clarion frowned a little and grumbled. The rest all nodded. Luthor stood up just as Ras took his seat. Now moving on. We have a different matter entirely to discuss. Aiden's point of view. I ran my fingers down the grooves of his face. My face. The space I had found myself in was a representation of the Avatar state's plane of consciousness, or maybe it was my own, I had no idea. It was the Southern Air Temple. Specifically, the chamber housing the statues of all the Avatars. The difference from canon was twofold. 1. My statue was not a statue but a real body, and 2. It was the only one in the whole room. That was not all, the link between us was making it hard to understand where I started and where he ended. All that meant was that if I kept on using the Avatar state without caution, next time I wouldn't take back control. No matter how many questions I asked it, the body in front of me remained unresponsive. Content to stand inside the empty chamber, quiet and lonely. It was disconcerting. I could feel I had regained control over my body and could wake up any moment I wanted, but I still wasn't satisfied. I had questions. Why had he risked a whole fucking town? If the Green Lanterns weren't there, Superman and the others would have failed to stop the massive elemental bomb. The other burning question I had was, how can I achieve control over the Avatar state? What was the Avatar state even? Maybe my theories were wrong because the power the entity commanded was simply shocking. Was that the level I was building towards? And was there a shortcut to get there? Now that I didn't have the resources and protection of the League, I needed to be strong enough to stand on my own 2 feet. And if I could gain control over the Avatar state, that would make it so much easier. I stared at my carbon copy once more. I had really changed from the Aiden of my past world. The muscles, increased height and the air of danger that surrounded me, hit home more than seeing flying men, aliens and versatile rings that could do anything. I got up after an hour from the meditative position I had taken below the Avatar state and walked up to it. I can't let you out anymore. Not until I gain control of you or all the elements. Whichever comes first. Saying that, I decided to leave. My surroundings had changed when I opened my eyes. Instead of the gray chamber in the Southern Air Temple, I found myself in a beach that overlooked a calm ocean. I was lying on the sandy beach wearing my maelstrom suit. Something I didn't remember having on during my fight with the Justice League and the team. I patted myself down to ensure I was okay and breathed out a sigh of relief when I found out that Superman hadn't blown a hole straight through my body. After doing that, I looked around at my surroundings. Okay, where the fuck am I? Did the Avatar state decide to take me out on a much-needed vacation, or is this one of the many mystical shit that DC is known for? I knew that whatever I was seeing wasn't fake, however. The water, the ocean life, the breeze, the swaying palm trees and slight salty taste in the wind, all that registered as real to me. Yet, something was slightly off about the whole setup. For instance, the air was too fresh. Too clean, and the rays of the sun above head hit my body with just the right temperature. It wasn't as oppressive as you'd expect from a real beach. And if that wasn't a clear indication that I wasn't in Happy Harbor anymore, a tremor/vibration that was barely detectable to my senses ran up my feet from the ground in a rhythmic pulse. It was right at the tip of my tongue. Like I knew exactly where I was, yet my brain refused to accept it due to how illogical the thought was. I controlled the air and flew up to the sky, staring down. An island? I was in an island. No cap. It was like the ones you saw on animation movies. A really clean beach with a beautiful shoreline, palm trees growing near the beach, and behind them a jungle that was filled with lush trees, all leading up to a mountain. Except this island didn't have a mountain. The layout was very similar to everything else I'd listed, however. There was a self-sustaining ecosystem, filled with everything from insects to small animals like squirrels. And right in the middle of the island was an open section. I used my superior eyesight to look further and felt my heart jump in shock. You've got to be kidding me. I'm staring at a lion turtle. This marks the end of part 20 of the story, Avatar in DC Universe. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.